Hello there, today I'm here to bring you the first half of my January wrap up. Now this month started a bit strange for me and I was quite slow. In the first week I was just too ill to really concentrate on anything. But that said, I have got quite a lot read. It's not necessarily all books, but I still consider it as reading. And I'm still counting it to my overall goal because actually I would quite like to delve into other mediums this year. So the first thing I read, there was a day where I was ill where I literally couldn't get out of bed. So I picked up Blue is the Warmest Colour by Julie Moreau, I think is how you say that, I don't know. And this is a graphic novel that I've been wanting to get to for a long time. It's also been made into a film, which is actually one of my favourite films. It's a French film. And I've seen the film so many times. So I wanted to pick up the source material, but I think because the film is so high in my estimation, the graphic novel was always going to struggle to live up to that standard. I think that was just inevitable. I did enjoy this. It predominantly focuses on a girl called Clementine, or in the film I don't think she's called Clementine, but I can't remember what she's called in the film. It focuses on her. She's in high school and you start seeing that she's kind of out of things. She's a bit different, and when she is walking to have a date with a guy, she ends up seeing this girl Emma, who has really blue hair and is a lesbian, and is clearly, you know, has her arm around her girlfriend, and her and Clementine kind of have an eye moment, and Clementine then goes out clubbing in some gay bars, predominantly because she wants to find Emma, because she's been having these fantasies that she doesn't understand. They then embark on a relationship. It's going to be difficult to talk about these because I don't want to spoil the film and I don't want to spoil this, but needless to say they end in very different ways, and I actually prefer the way the film ends. I think the way that this ended was just a bit odd. I did enjoy the body of this. It was much more YA kind of esque than the film. The film is very X-rated, whereas this is more YA. It's kind of written in letter format, and it's about this young relationship and this young couple and coming to age and realising that, you know, you have these feelings, which I think I really enjoyed that aspect, and I think this would be important for somebody who's going through something like that, whereas as I say, the film is definitely aimed at a much older audience, but I have to say, yeah, that kind of put me off to start with. However, once I got into it, I really enjoyed it. And I also enjoyed the fact that this focuses much more on Clementine's parents' reaction to her relationship with Emma, because that is kind of glossed over in the film. I feel like this very much looks at how other people treat somebody who is coming out. And in the film we do see her friends' reactions, but we don't really see her parents' reactions. We know that she doesn't tell them in the film, but there's never a revelation moment where she comes out and says, this is my girlfriend, whereas in this it very much looks more into that and how they react and how that sort of impacts the relationship, and I thought that was quite a important thing to have in there, but I felt like the end was very rushed and kind of for the sake of it, and yeah, it kind of spoiled it for me. As I say, overall it was enjoyable, but the ending was just really out of place and stuck on and pretty bad. But as I say, the body of this is really good. I really like the art style in this as well, because it's all done in black and white, and then you've got Emma's blue hair, and Emma is sort of the only colourful thing in this, which I think is really lovely. I'm just trying to find a picture that isn't too rude. There are some rude scenes in here, not as many as in the film, not half as many as in the film, but there are some in there. It's a little bit rude, but I think it's one that I really liked the most, and it's when Clementine has just seen Emma and she's having a fantasy, and as you can see, Emma's, I won't show you too much graphicness, but Emma's hands are blue as they're on Clementine's body, and I think that's just, I really liked the use of colour in this. So yeah, there's that one. I would recommend it, and I think if you haven't seen the film you would probably enjoy it a lot more than I did in the sort of shadow of my feelings for the film. Then I read Reservoir XIII by John McGregor. I had it in my head that this was going to be my first read for 2018 to start on a good note. Obviously it didn't happen, because this is not, for those of you who have read this, you will understand this is not the kind of book you should be reading when you're ill, because it just, no. This is fantastic. I gave it 5 stars, and I admittedly think that I probably upped it because it's John McGregor and I love John McGregor. It probably in reality is a 4-star, just a disclaimer, but I really enjoyed the process of reading it, and I really enjoyed the feelings it gave me, so I did up it. It's really difficult to explain, but it basically, in the way that even the dogs hinges on the death of a man, but it's not really about that. This is about the disappearance of a girl in this town, and I think if you go into it expecting it to be about that and expecting there to be a resolution, there's not. But that's just the sort of inciting moment, and then we follow on from there, and we follow pretty much most of the people in this street over 13 years. They're constantly coming back to the disappearance of this girl and how it's affected the people on the street. But it's basically just about life on a street, in the same way that If Nobody Speaks of Remarkable Things, I think this is kind of a step back to that for John McGregor, because it's very much the snapshot imagery and, you know, building a picture of community life. You don't get really in-depth of each character because you're looking at a whole street. Each chapter is a year. You just get snapshots of what's happening to everybody, but you get the important stuff, you get the pivotal moments for them, and it's just really interesting. I think to have crafted something like this, you just have to think of how broad John McGregor had to approach this novel to cover 13 years, and there are so many characters in here, and you don't get the intimate details that you might in another novel, you get an overall picture of who these people are, what's happening in their lives. It's fantastic and so ambitious, but so well done. I would recommend it, though again, I don't think, as with a lot of John McGregor things, I don't think it's for everyone. If you have read John McGregor before and enjoyed him, you will enjoy this. Then I've got If You Look For Me, I Am Not Here by Reservoir XIII. This was for my Bloomers Books reading, and I have done an individual review, which I will link down below. It's kind of about gender in India. We look at a family where the mother is expecting twins, but she doesn't know that she's expecting twins, and she's wishing and wishing for a baby girl. What she's actually got is a boy and a girl, but the girl dies just after her birth, before the boy is born, and obviously the mother doesn't know that she's having twins, so the loss of the girl hits her, and then suddenly she has a boy, and it really has an impact on her mental health, and she treats the boy as though he is the girl that she lost, and it looks at how that impacts the way that this boy looks at his own gender. It's really interesting. As I say, if you want to know more, please check out my individual review. I really enjoyed this. It's the best Bloomers book I have read so far. Then I finished an audiobook, which was The Diary of Adrian Mole by Sue Townsend. I read this when I was really young, and I really wanted to re-experience it. I have to say I read this when I was about 9, and listening to it, I don't think I should have read this when I was about 9. I remember thinking it was absolutely hilarious, best book I'd ever read. So there you go. And it is aimed at children, but it's pretty risque. This is the diary of a 13-year-old called Adrian Mole. He thinks he's an intellectual, so he thinks he's really clever, and he reads all these grand books and makes all these political statements, but actually he's just completely missing the mark on a lot of things. And he obviously experiences sexuality, he gets a first girlfriend, and it's just his trials and tribulations. Obviously, because he thinks he's an intellectual and he takes himself very seriously, it just adds that comic value to his diary. So, like, Adrian Mole, he reads all these big literary books that he thinks he should be reading, and, like, there's sections in there when he'll say, oh, reading a book by some guy called George Eliot, and things like this, and it's just so funny, so funny. The only thing I was disappointed with was the narration on the audio. I can't remember who does it, and I haven't got my phone here with me to check, sorry, but I didn't like it. It was very monotone, it just didn't quite work for me. But as you go on, it does kind of start to work. It morphs into Adrian's voice in your head, and you do get used to it. But yeah, out of all the audiobooks I've listened to, I'd say that I liked the narration on this one the least. But anyway, as I say, it was hilarious. I really enjoyed it. Then I read a short story collection, which was Roald Dahl's Kiss Kiss. I picked up a big box set of Roald Dahl short story collections a few years ago now, and I've never actually gotten around to them, and I don't know why. But anyway, I really wanted to get to one this year, so I started with this one. I have to say I really enjoyed it. It's typical Roald Dahl-esque, kind of humorous, grotesque, disgusting, disturbing stories. Obviously they're a bit darker because they're for adults. You can still see the style of his child books in here as well. There are stories in here about a landlady who never lets her guests leave. There's a story in here about a woman who pawns a mink coat that her lover gives her, wanting to get it back, and they all have shock endings. There's also a story in here about a parson who tries to trick people into selling him antiques for really cheap, and it all kind of backfires on him. There are just some really fun and fantastical stories in here, and all of them are just dark and disturbing and just gruesomely fun. And then the last thing I consumed is Womankind. This is a magazine that I have been reading for about 2 months. It's taken me a really long time. I picked it up on the back of reading Breathe magazine, which I got through so quickly and I really enjoyed. I didn't enjoy this as much. I think for my personal style it wasn't necessarily what I was after. That said, you know, everyone is picking this up at the moment and everyone's really enjoying it, and I think probably because I read it so slowly that did hinder my enjoyment. That said, it's still a beautiful creation. So the end papers even are stunning. There is some stunning imagery in here, and it's just a very pretty magazine. And this issue focuses on Tanzania and how women are treated in Tanzania. It's also got sort of some general articles in there as well, but predominantly it focuses on Tanzanian women, and I think for me that just wasn't something that I wanted to read about at the time. I don't know why, it just didn't really appeal. I think the problem is as well that I didn't set aside the time to specifically read it. I tried to pick it up in between doing other things, so I wasn't concentrating 100% and I was kind of skipping over articles. So I don't think I did this magazine any favours, but it is a beautiful physical object and I would give Womankind another go. But as I say, it didn't quite float my boat at the time. That's everything I've read in the first half of January. It's not going too badly so far. I hope everyone else is having a really good reading time for the start of the year, and I'll see you next time. Bye!